Good afternoon and welcome to our session on understanding food labels. This is Rachel Davidson speaking from Living Healthy Champlain. So I'm the regional coordinator of Living Healthy Champlain, and this is one of our webinars that we're offering. So each month we offer a different webinar on a topic that helps us have a look at an element of our health. And it's a really brief overview, and our aim is to really help you understand some of these different aspects of health and managing our health, and really supporting you to be able to have that knowledge and maybe just build on the knowledge that you already have that will help you to be able to understand these different aspects and then be able to go on to better manage your health, be better informed. So that's really our goal. So this is one of the things that we do as part of our programming. Some of the other things that we do, and probably how you became aware of this, is we also offer Living a Healthy Life with Chronic Conditions workshops, Living a Healthy Life with Chronic Pain workshops, and Better Choices, Better Health online workshops. So those series of workshops are 6-week series. The online version is available across Ontario. The in-person sessions are available across Ontario as well. We, in particular, coordinate the workshops that take place across the Champlain region. And so that's one of the things we do. And we also offer training for healthcare providers to better equip them to be able to support patients living with chronic conditions, to be able to take that active role, support patients with behavior change, improve that communication and that partnership between provider and patient, so that they can work better together towards the common goal of the patient living as healthy as possible with chronic condition. So that's a little bit about us. And as I said, I'm Rachel Davidson, the regional coordinator of Living Healthy Champlain. And this is taken from our Help with Your Health series that are offered in person as well. So if you are interested in attending any of these sessions that do happen to be a webinar in person, that is possible. And they are quite interactive when you do attend them in person as well. So there's a bit of a few more pieces that you'll get if you do go in person that unfortunately we can't do online. And I'm just going to touch base on a few of the technical elements of our webinar. So we just want to make sure that your computer audio is clicked here so that you can hear me, and that's how you'll be able to hear the webinar. The webinar is recorded, and you will get a link to where you can view the recording afterwards if you want to go back and revisit some of the information and just refresh yourself on that. So it's available on a recorded link as well as on our YouTube channel. And on our YouTube channel, you'll also find a few of our past webinars. When we actually had a guest speaker, Dr. Yoni Friedhoff, and he did a piece on dieting, so that may be of interest to you following this webinar as well. If there are any questions, you can type them in the question box, and then I will answer those. I will read the question, and then I will answer it for you. If for some reason you don't want your question read aloud and you'd rather me send it to you privately, I'm happy to do that as well. Just let me know. In terms of if there's any questions that I can't answer for any reason, certainly I will look to find the answer and I can get back to you on that. If for some reason I can't answer it, I will let you know, and then we can arrange to have that question sent to you. There's a question already that I see, and it does say, is there any change on the food labels lately? I will address some of the changes that Health Canada is working around in terms of nutritional information and guidelines just a bit later on in the presentation. I'd just like to take a quick poll. So if you can just take a moment to answer that. Just where you're joining us from today, just so we can get a sense of where people are coming from. So I'll just give a minute to let you answer that question. I do apologize in advance if the webinar makes you hungry today. Hopefully you have some lunch with you, because there's some lovely food that will come up. So we almost have everyone voted for our poll as to where you're joining us from today. So thank you for doing that. So I'm going to actually start the webinar, and as I said, if there are any questions, I will try to answer those as we go along as best I can, and so feel free to type those into me. We unfortunately can't have a call-in line right now, just due to the technology and recording the session. So unfortunately, we have to answer the questions by typing in right now. So as I said, we'll start our webinar now, sort of officially. So in Canada, we have a variety of choices, sometimes too many choices maybe, in terms of where we can buy our food and what choices we make for the types of food that we choose. So just a few things to sort of think about as we go through this presentation is, do you tend to prepare food from scratch? Or do you tend to buy ready-made food? Do you typically order takeout? Maybe a combination of all of these. Do you look at food labels currently to help you decide which foods you're going to choose? Do you make a meal plan for the week? Do you prepare a shopping list? Do you tend to order out all of your food? Do you tend to go to the grocery store and just buy food, you know, whatever you see at the time that appeals to you? So in terms of our food buying habits, these can vary widely, and no person is going to be the same. So we're all going to have different habits. And then there's the consideration of what should we actually be eating. So there's a lot of information about what good food choices are out there for us and what poor choices can be. Information can be found virtually everywhere, from our providers, our family, our friends, in the news, online, all over social media. Many times, because there's so much information, there's so much conflicting information, that this can be really confusing and really overwhelming to us. We're always hearing about, you know, one day that we should eat less salt, the next day we should stop eating sugar. We should only eat certain types of sugar. We should eat certain types of oils, and then the next day we might hear that we shouldn't eat that oil. The example I always use is that one day we might hear that we should eat egg whites, and then the next day only the yolks, and then the next day we shouldn't eat eggs at all. So it can be very confusing and very overwhelming for us to try and sort through all of the information out there. So hopefully we'll be able to help you navigate that a little bit today. And then there's the fact of food marketing to consider. So marketing can make everything sound really good, and it can also be really confusing. So you can see all the labels there, made with real honey, organic, fat-free, sugar-free. So when we see things, we might be drawn to them and want to purchase these products without really understanding maybe what they actually are. So food companies know that most of us are concerned about our health, or that we might want to lose weight. And as I said, common labels that are used to really influence us or get our attention include things like excellent source of, low fat, reduced sugar, etc. Labels can make it hard to know what is healthy. So this product in particular, Lucky Charms, is a cereal that I'm sure many of us have seen or heard of. So this product may not have a lot of calories, and it has labels on the front that make it sound really healthy, like whole grain guaranteed, excellent source of calcium and vitamin D. So at first glance, we might be inclined to purchase this product and thinking that it's a healthy choice for us. However, when we have a closer look at that nutritional label, we can see that there's quite a long list of ingredients, and those ingredients are all highly processed. So not a lot of nutritional value in this particular product, even though it has a lot of these claims here on the front. So amidst all of the choices and the marketing and the confusion that is out there, what can we do to make informed, healthy choices? So there are some basic things that we can do. One being eat a variety of foods. The second being cooking from scratch whenever possible. And lastly, which we're really going to focus on today, is reading the labels on our food. So for the first one, we really want to try and eat a variety of foods as much as possible. Canada's current food guide describes what amount of food people need and what type of food is part of healthy eating patterns. This includes food from each of the 4 food groups: vegetables and fruit, grains, milk and alternatives, and meat and alternatives, plus a certain amount of added oils and fats. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's been a lot of changes currently happening to Canada's food guide. So that guide will be released sometime in 2018. We know it's quite outdated right now in terms of the recommendations, and as we are continually gaining more knowledge around health and nutrition, guidelines need to be updated. So that happens across the healthcare spectrum. So that's currently taking place with Canada's food guide. And so what I've done is included some of the current guidelines that are currently being reviewed. However, they are updated. So that's what I've included while we're in this transition phase. So what I've included is the current guiding principles that are available on Health Canada's website. And so when we're looking a bit deeper into the variety of foods that we should be eating, this is what Health Canada currently recommends. So regular intake of vegetables, fruit, whole grains, and protein-rich foods, especially plant-based sources of protein. Sorry for the typo there. And those plant-based sources of protein can include things like legumes, which are beans, nuts, and seeds, some of the soy products, eggs, fish, other seafood. Also, other protein-rich sources are poultry, lean red meats, and that can include game meats, lower fat milk and yogurt, cheeses lower in sodium and fat, as well as nutritious foods that contain fat, such as homogenized milk. And just the note that milk should not be restricted for young children. Other inclusions are foods that contain mostly unsaturated fat, as well as regular intake of water. The second guiding principle is that we should limit our intake of processed or prepared foods that are high in sodium, sugars, or saturated fat. We're going to have a look at how we find that information on our food label. And avoidance of processed or prepared beverages high in sugars. So typical processed or beverages that are high in sugar can include soft drinks, fruit-flavored drinks, fruit juice, flavored waters, energy drinks, sport drinks, and other sweetened hot or cold beverages. The third principle is that we select nutritious foods when shopping or eating out. A big benefit now is that menus in restaurants, coffee shops, etc., as I'm sure you've noticed, are all required now, to provide caloric information on their menus. So that does give us a bit more knowledge and insight into what we're eating and what we're selecting. So that can be helpful now when we're eating out. Also, you can always ask for things to not be cooked in oil. You can request certain changes when you're eating out to make those items more healthy for you. Planning and preparing healthy meals and snacks as much as possible. If you are eating out, the meals tend to be really, really large, so sharing those meals with family and friends rather than having the whole portion ourselves. So the second main thing that we can do ourselves is to cook when you can. It doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be expensive, but just using whole natural foods and making them ourselves. That's the one way that we can really ensure we know what's going into our foods and we do have that control over it. So if you have been recommended that you have, a salt-reduced diet, you can then control how much sodium is going into your food. So when you cook from scratch, we can also control the amount of salt, sugar, and fat that's added into our meals. This also means, as I said, we're eating food that's less processed and it has more of those whole natural ingredients and more nutrition at the end of the day. Thirdly, what we're really going to focus on for the next little bit is reading the labels on food. So the different kinds of nutrition information found on food labels are the nutrition facts, the ingredient list, nutrition claims, and health claims. Only nutrition facts and the ingredient lists are mandatory in Canada. The following slides are from Health Canada that I will show you. So this is our nutrition fact label that I'm sure you've all seen on our packages of food that we purchase. It is fairly easy to find, and it is on most prepackaged foods. Nutrition facts became mandatory for almost all prepackaged foods on December 12th, 2005. The nutrition facts table appears on food labels with a consistent look, making it easy to find and hopefully easier to read after today. The nutrition fact table includes a specific amount of food, which all nutrient information is based, calories, and 13 core nutrients, the actual amount of a nutrient in milligrams or grams, so you can see those here, as well as the percent daily value, okay, which is over here. So this is probably one of the most important pieces of the nutrition label that we'll talk about today. They're all important, but this one in particular, that some of us may not really understand what that portion size looks like. So this is the portion size for that given food. And sometimes it can be quite shocking when we actually measure that out. For instance, oftentimes a portion of soup is like half a cup. So maybe a piece of homework for you is to go out and measure out what a half a cup of water, for instance, today looks like, and just see what a small amount that is. And for something like packaged soup, which is what we look at the in-person session of this particular workshop, we compare labels of a soup can, and when you measure out that very small half cup portion, one, is not very much, and two, often the sodium level in that soup is almost your entire daily intake. So it's just really interesting when we start to measure out portions and also look at what is then the calorie content and breakdown of that portion. I would also encourage you, whether it's with water or dry goods, to just, if you have a set of measuring cups, you can even get them from the dollar store, so they don't have to be expensive. So you have those on hand at home so that you can measure out your portions. And also just to start to familiarize yourself, if you're not already, with what that actually looks like. Because you'll start to be able to recognize, the more you practice it, what those portion sizes actually look like and become familiar with that. So you can definitely get those from the dollar store. The other thing you can get is a food scale, which you can also usually get for like under $20 as well. So what foods actually have labels on them? Almost all prepackaged foods have nutrition facts. Some exceptions are fresh fruit and vegetables, raw meat, unless it's ground, poultry, fish, and seafood, foods prepared or processed at the store, bakery items, sausage, salads, foods that contain very few nutrients, coffee, beans, tea, leaves, spices, and alcoholic beverages. So, as I was saying, nutrition facts are based on a specific amount of food. So for instance, here we can see 3/4 of a cup or 100 grams. We need to compare this to the amount that we're actually eating. So are we in fact eating 3 cups? And then we would need to more than triple the calories, fat, etc., etc. So the more we eat, we obviously need to multiply these other numbers to get the true amount that we're eating. The first thing that we should do when we read the nutrition facts table is to look at the specific amount of food listed. So in this instance, 3/4 of a cup. Compare it to how much we actually eat. If you eat more or less than the specified amount, each nutrient obviously will either be more or less, depending on how much you're eating. The specific amount will be given in measures you may be familiar with, such as 1 cup or 1 slice of bread, and in a metric unit, such as milliliters or grams. It's important to refer to this amount when comparing products. So we can't necessarily just take 2 similar products and compare them. We need to make sure that those measurements are the same. The specific amount of food is not necessarily a suggested quantity of food to consume. So one way that food companies can make their food maybe seem more appealing or healthy is to have a very small serving portion. So sometimes it's only 1/4 cup, which is very, very small. And so we need to pay attention to that value. The next step when we're looking at our nutrition label is the percent daily value. Sorry, I skipped ahead there. And so this is located in this column here, so it'll be a percentage next to these other listings. Okay. And so we're going to have a look at 3 steps to understanding the percent daily value. So step 1 is we need to look at the amount of food nutrition facts are based on and compare this to the amount we eat. Okay. So we have our calories, our fat, and then we can scroll down here and see how much of our total percentage that is for the day. So these are benchmarks for evaluating the nutrient content of foods quickly and easily as well. So for instance, if the sodium said 75% of our daily value, we might take into consideration that this may not be the best food for us to choose. The second step for the percent daily value is to see whether a specific amount of food has a little, a lot of a nutrient. So as a rule of thumb, remember the following numbers. 5% of our daily value or less is a little bit. 15% of our daily value or more is a lot. This applies to all nutrients in the nutrients fact table. The third step that we want to look at when evaluating our daily value is we want to look for food products with higher percentages for fiber, vitamin A, calcium, and iron. We want to look for foods with lower percent daily values for fat, saturated and trans fats, and sodium. And we always want to remember to compare similar amounts of food. There's no mention of vitamin C in the nutrients to increase list, but for some individuals it could be a nutrient to increase. Vegetables and fruit are the best food sources of vitamin C. So that's something you can always ask your dietitian or healthcare provider whether vitamin C is something that you need to be aware of. General health claims have appeared in recent years on front of package labeling. These include broad things like healthy for you, healthy choice claims, as well as symbols, logos, and specific words. These claims are generally developed by third parties or corporations based on information that is closely regulated by the federal government. While it is required that this information be truthful and not misleading, consumers should not rely solely on general health claims to make informed food choices. For instance, when we saw in that package of cereal in the beginning of the presentation that it was a good source of calcium, I believe it was, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a healthy food choice. So we need to look at that nutrition label and understand what else is in that food. Is it those whole natural ingredients, or is it mostly processed? Is it high in fat, sugar, and salt, etc.? So we need to consider the whole picture. Just in review, so we want to use the nutrition facts table on food labels to help us choose products that contain less fat, less saturated fat, low trans fat, sugar, and sodium, as recommended by Health Canada. Keep in mind that the calories and nutrients listed are for the specific amount of food at the top of the nutrition facts table. Compare this to the amount you actually are eating. So just in summary, there are 3 steps that we can take to making healthier food choices. So we want to eat a variety of foods. We want to cook from scratch whenever possible. Again, that doesn't mean that it needs to be expensive or fancy, just that we're using whole, simple, nutritious ingredients. That also gives us the power to control the fat, salt, sugar, sodium, etc. that's going into our meals. We want to read the labels on food. When we're reading our nutrition labels, we want to use the nutrition facts. We want to look at the ingredient list. So as a rule of thumb, we always want to see less ingredients. We want to see ingredients that we recognize, less chemicals. We want to see more pure whole ingredients listed. And being aware of health claims on packaging and making informed food choices by reading those ingredients and the nutrition label to make an informed choice rather than just going solely by those health claims on the label. We want to always compare the nutrition facts to the actual amount that we're eating. We want to use the percent daily value to see if the food has a little or a lot of a nutrient. And remember our rule of thumb that 5% daily value or less is a little, and 15% daily value or more is a lot. So that is our overview of nutrition labels. Are there any questions before we leave? I see a question. It says, one question. I'm just if you can type some clarification, asking whether it can be fake, a fake label in Canada. So the nutrition label on foods has to be verified by governing parties in Canada, so they are regulated in terms of what's on there. I hope that answers your question. You will get a brief survey just in a follow-up email from the webinar, as well as our link to our website. So we do offer a variety of other workshops and sessions, so I invite you to have a look at that and just see if anything else is of interest to you. As well, if you are joining us from other places across Ontario, we're happy to point you in the direction of your local program as well. And there's a brief survey, as I said, and the link to the recording will also be available there, both on our YouTube channel as well, where there are other webinars available that you can watch. So there's just one more question. So is there a specific question around a specific food label? I don't know that I can answer just because I can't see the label. If you want to email me after, I'm happy to follow up with you and try and answer that around that particular label. Okay, so that concludes our webinar for today. If there are any questions, you can certainly email me at rdavidson@briere.org. And my contact information should be in the follow-up email as well. And we're happy to answer those for you. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you found this beneficial. Have a lovely day.